English professor for over 30 years now. I got to where I am because I grew up loving literature, loving to read, loving school also. I mean, I just, I've always loved school. I never wanted to leave, so I never did. And so I teach literature, and I also, I really am interested in cultural engagement, cultural criticism, and literature reflects culture. So I think that's sort of another niche that I've carved out, is like looking at culture at large, but also evangelical culture or subculture and all the things that have formed it. And so I'm interested in evangelicalism, the history of it, because it began in the 18th century in England, which is my period. And a lot of what we're experiencing now, good and bad, is rooted in that period. And so kind of trying to make all those connections that I've studied my whole adult life is really that's what this book is.
Where did you grow up?
I was born and raised mostly in Maine. Moved to Buffalo, New York when I was in high school. And so that's where I kind of ended up going to school and university, and lived there for a long time before moving to the Bible Belt where I am now.
Which is very different. I lived in New England.
It's very, very different. I mean, culture shock doesn't even begin to describe it, and I've never really recovered, actually. I think we'll get into this more, but I think a lot of why people in my church life now, I don't mean my local church, but just in Christian life now, misunderstand me, is because I have a posture that's very different from what you find in the Bible Belt. I mean, I was the only Christian I knew, outside of my family. So I grew up among secularists and agnostics and skeptics. And so I just never took my faith for granted or took other people's faith for granted. So I've always just had a sort of open posture toward others. And it's a much more defensive and sort of circling the wagons ethos here in the South, I think.
Oh, it is entirely. I remember you mentioned and refer to David Bebbington in the book. And I remember talking with David, we were talking about one of the differences in the posture of British Christian or British evangelicals and American evangelicals. And he was mentioning how you have a cultural power that we do not. And it causes you to think differently. Yes, it causes you to express it very differently. And of course, you being so do you call yourself a New Englander or an Easter? What do you call yourself?
A Yankee.
That's an easy one to do. I know. How long were you in Maine?
We moved away from there once when I was little, but my dad's job moved him back and forth, and then moved away. Been gone since I was 16, but I still have family there, and friends, and that's where the old homestead is, and so
Were your family? You mentioned something else in the book. Did you grow up on a farm?
I just grew up in the country. We just had a few acres.
Okay.
But my grandparents were farmers. I mean, I just always lived in a very rural area, or mostly lived in a rural area. When I was in college, I didn't, but